The first time Kabir Verma saw the Merawat Haveli, it was buried beneath sand and silence. The structure loomed at the edge of Kuldhara village like a relic out of time. Arched courtyards broken by roots, crumbling balconies overlooking the desert, and doors sealed with ancient chains etched in ash-colored handprints. No signs, no path, just rumors. A cursed palace, the villagers said. They died but didn't leave. Even the wind doesn't sleep there. But Kabir wasn't the superstitious type. He was an entrepreneur, young, wealthy, and obsessed with boutique restoration. He'd converted a Parsi fire temple into a speakeasy in Mumbai, a Portuguese fort in Goa into a coastal resort. This would be his crown jewel, a heritage hotel in the Rajasthan desert. Heritage sans retreat. He ignored the warnings, hired a Delhi crew, and cleared the rubble. The outer walls were preserved, but the interiors were remodeled. Luxury without disturbing cultural essence. Designers added hand-carved jolly windows. The atrium now had a marble fountain, and every suite was themed after Rajput royalty. But there was one room no one could explain. Room 309. It wasn't on the original blueprint. The room's door didn't match the others. It had no number plate, just a brass key that kept appearing in the front desk drawer, even when it was thrown out. We never opened that room, the architect had said. The wall behind it doesn't exist. It's just space. And yet, guests kept reporting it. One man, booked in room 203, claimed he was taken to 309 by a bellboy with burnt hands. A French couple found room 309 listed on their invoice, even though it had never been assigned. And every time the staff tried to nail the door shut, it would be open again by morning. Then came the night of the soft launch. 10 guests, all influencers and travel writers, were invited for the preview stay. Everything went smoothly until 2:03 a.m. The fountain stopped flowing, the Wi-Fi cut out, and the wind that howled through the Haveli carried a voice, soft female, crying in Marwari. The French couple went missing that night. Their bags remained. Phones left charging. Security footage from the hallway showed the husband pacing toward the unmarked door, key in hand. Then nothing. Static. The police found no signs of struggle, but in the hotel's antique ledger, the one placed in the lobby purely for aesthetic, someone had written in perfect red ink, Room 309, M and L Durand. Checked in. Will not check out. Kabir dismissed it as a prank, until the next morning, when the sand in the central courtyard shifted, and a handprint appeared in it. From beneath. The morning after the Durands vanished, Kabir called the police. Again, not the local constables. They had already stopped responding. He called the district superintendent in Jaisalmer, offered a fat envelope, and got a team by noon. They searched room 309 and found nothing, just a bed untouched, curtains drawn, and cold air seeping from a stone. The team left within an hour, muttering prayers under their breath. Kabir tried to calm the other guests, told them the French couple had left early. But they knew. Everyone knew. Because sometime during the night, every mirror in the Haveli cracked from the inside. Not shattered, just fractured, like something had pressed its way out. And there were footprints in the hallway, bare, small, leading out of room 309. That evening, Kabir sat with the ledger. It had changed. Not just the ink, or the names. It had added entries that no one had written. Room 201, Mrs. Indira Chatterjee. Checked in. asked for the sea, found the well. Room 302, Mohandas, did not believe, now believes nothing. Each name was real, each matched a current guest. And beneath the list, in fresh red, Room 309, reserved. No name, no date, just waiting. That night, Kabir instructed the staff to seal the door permanently. Brick it if needed. They tried, but when the masons returned in the morning, the bricks were shattered on the floor, and the door stood open. Inside, the air was boiling hot. The housekeeper assigned to the West Wing quit, not because of the door, but because she found a child's handprint in the mirror of a room no child had entered. She said she'd heard someone breathing behind her when she changed the bedsheets, and someone crying from the courtyard fountain where no one sat. Then came the tourists from Ahmedabad. They had booked online, 2 nights, double suite, but when they arrived, they were furious. Why were we put in a room with blood on the window? Kabir rushed to their room. No blood, but the window fogged from the inside, and when he wiped it clean, he saw the words appear again. Let us out. By the end of the week, 2 more guests left early. One refused to say why. The other simply handed back the key and said, she doesn't want visitors anymore. That night, Kabir heard a knock on his door. He lived alone on the upper floor. No other guests were assigned rooms nearby. When he opened it, no one was there, but the key to room 309 lay on the floor, still warm, and the hotel ledger, left in the lobby, had a new name. Room 309 K. Verma. Manager. Believer. Next, Kabir didn't sleep. Not because he was afraid, he wouldn't admit that, but because something in the Haveli had changed. The silence now had a shape. The shadows moved with intention, and the walls no longer echoed his footsteps back to him. At 3:09 a.m., he heard the fountain start. It shouldn't have. It had been drained that morning after black water leaked through the tiles. He looked out over the courtyard, and there she was, a woman in bridal red, standing motionless beside the fountain. Her gungra anklets glittered faintly. Her veil covered her face. But Kabir saw her hands, henna-stained and twitching. He called out, voice shaking, "Hello? Ma'am, are you all right?" She didn't move. Then she lifted her head, revealing no face beneath the veil, only void. Kabir stumbled back. When he looked again, she was gone, but the marble around the fountain had cracked. In the center of the courtyard, drawn in perfectly etched lines of dust, were 5 words. You opened the wrong door. He checked room 309. Still locked. Still untouched. Or so it seemed. Later that morning, Kabir's phone buzzed. The renovation architect, Shania, had returned. She looked haggard, her voice thin. "I shouldn't have come back," she whispered. "I've been dreaming in sandstone." She handed him a rolled scroll, discovered behind one of the ceiling panels. "It's a death registry," she said, "but not of villagers." The list was long, dozens of names, all dated before 1873, but matched to guests who had stayed at the new hotel. Even Kabir's own name was there, with a note in faded red ink. The Haveli records what will be. That night, room 204's guest, a travel vlogger named Samir, went missing. His last video upload, recorded around 2:57 a.m., showed him laughing in the hallway, mocking the haunted rumors. But in the final few seconds, the camera flipped suddenly to his own face, and behind him, standing upside down on the ceiling, was the veiled woman. Samir screamed. The video ended. His phone was found in the courtyard. Screen cracked. Next to it was a single red rose. Fresh, but still dripping wet, as if pulled from a body of water that hadn't existed for 100 years. And the guest ledger? It turned a page on its own. Wrote in fresh ink. Room 204 S. Mahajan. Laughed too loud. She answered. The Haveli had stopped pretending. There were no more excuses for the guests. No more whispers of technical issues or local mischief. Because now everyone could hear her. At precisely 2:43 a.m., a woman began to weep in the courtyard. It wasn't soft. It wasn't distant. It was right outside every room. The cries moved from door to door like wind, howling 1 second, breathless the next. And those who dared peek through their peepholes saw the same thing. A bridal veil fluttering past, trailing footprints of blood. That night, no one slept. The next morning, 3 rooms were empty, bags untouched, doors still locked, and each missing guest had been seen stepping out of room 309, even though Kabir still carried the only key. He opened it at dawn. Inside, nothing, except one thing now sat at the center of the stone floor, a shallow brass bowl filled with black water, and floating in it, a human eye. Kabir stumbled out, vomiting into the hallway. The bowl was gone when he returned, but that night, a young staff boy, Ramu, came running to Kabir's room, screaming in Marwari, clutching something in his hands. He dropped it into Kabir's lap. It was a torn bridal veil, soaked and reeking of rose water and decay. Ramu sobbed, saying she had appeared to him in the laundry chamber, whispered into his ear in a voice that was also his mother's, asking him to follow her to the water. He didn't, but the next morning, the hotel's new fountain, built above the original village well, was clogged. They opened the drain, pulled out hair, long black, braided, tied with gold thread, still warm. Kabir finally confronted Alok, the eldest villager who had warned him during the restoration. The old man only stared at him. "You broke the chain," he said. "The Merawat daughter drowned herself in the old well when her groom vanished. They sealed the house with her grief inside. The chains weren't for keeping people out. They were to keep her in." That night, Kabir woke to the sound of keys rattling. He opened his drawer. The brass key to room 309 was gone, and his door was unlocked. Outside, the hallway was dark. A trail of wet rose petals led toward the unmarked door, and in the guest ledger, a new entry had written itself. "Room 309, she is coming." Kabir followed the trail. Each rose petal glistened with moisture, too fresh, too red, as if they had never touched desert air. The hallway was colder than it should have been, and the silence was now alive, like it leaned in every time he took a step. Room 309 stood at the end of the corridor. The door, once sealed with iron and prayer, now stood ajar. The key was in the lock, turning slowly, by itself. Click, click, click. Kabir reached for the handle with a hand that wasn't his anymore, cold, shaking, foreign. Inside, room 309 was no longer a room. It was a ritual space. The walls had peeled, revealing old murals beneath, painted in soot and blood. A bride with no face, her arms stretched wide. Below her, rows of guests, no faces either, just blank ovals. But the most disturbing part was the bed. It wasn't a bed. It was a stone platform, and on it rested a bridal dress, still warm, still wet, still breathing. The hem fluttered as if someone lay beneath it. Kabir turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind him, locked. From the outside, he banged and screamed, but the walls only sighed. Then the mirror lit up, not from within, but from behind it. A figure stood there, the bride, her veil dripping, her wrists cut, her feet bare and blackened. She didn't move, but her reflection did. It raised its hand, touched the glass, and began to push through. The mirror cracked, not outward, but inward, as though it was trying to suck Kabir inside. He turned and threw himself against the wall, clawed at the door, and suddenly it opened. He fell into the hallway, gasping. The lights returned. The roses were gone. Room 309 stood dark and empty again. But when he looked back, something was left on the threshold. A single sandalwood comb, old, splintered, with hair still caught between the teeth. Kabir didn't tell anyone what he saw in room 309. What would he say? That the mirror tried to breathe him in? That the bridal dress exhaled? That he heard his own voice from inside the wall begging him to stay? But silence didn't save him, because that night the other guests began to return. At first it was just glimpses, faces seen through windows on the second floor, or shadows moving past doors that had been locked since opening day. One housekeeper claimed she served breakfast to a French couple on the terrace, but no such couple was checked in. The Durands were back, but they weren't alive. On the seventh night, a storm rolled in from the desert, unnatural, dry thunder without a cloud in sight. The wind blew inward, rattling the rooms, slamming shutters open, pushing dust through sealed vents. And then, from beneath the hotel, a pounding began. Not random, rhythmic, deliberate. It came from the old stone floors, from underneath the foundation. Kabir ran to the blueprint cabinet, rummaging through historical plans. He found it, an 1803 layout of the original Haveli. There had been catacombs, tunnels dug beneath the mansion for water storage and escape during sieges. And in the center of those catacombs, a second well, sealed, never marked on tourist maps. That night, he pried open the trapdoor behind the linen room, just like the old plan showed. Dust poured out. So did laughter. Children laughing, but not happily, not human. He descended slowly, flashlight flickering. The tunnel was tight, curved like ribs. Along the walls, hundreds of handprints, some red, some black, all pressed into the stone with unnatural strength. And at the center, a dry well. Its bricks were blackened. Its lid was marked with symbols. At its base sat the wedding trunk, old wood, red lacquer faded by time. He opened it. Inside were wedding items, a necklace, a veil, and a journal. The bride's journal. He didn't come. I waited. I wore the dress. They said he died in the desert, but I know better. He ran. He left me alone in the mirror. So I stayed there. Now I watch every face, and I wait for mine. Kabir slammed it shut, but behind him someone whispered, "Kabir." He turned and saw himself reflected in the black water of the well. Only the reflection was smiling and wearing the bridal necklace. Kabir didn't sleep after returning from the catacombs. He locked himself in the manager's quarters and burned the bride's journal in the bathroom sink. The paper hissed and twisted, curling into ash. Yet the last line burned slowest. "If he won't come back, I will." That night, Every mirror in the hotel reflected her. Not just glimpses, full apparitions. Guests screamed. One man leapt from the second floor after seeing his reflection smile without him. In room 108, a woman locked herself in the bathroom after watching the mirror show her brushing her hair, except her hands weren't moving. And room 309, now wide open, guests claimed to hear wedding bells from within. No music, just bells. Soft, hollow, ringing from a place where no one celebrated. Kabir ordered the room sealed again. No one obeyed, because the staff, too, had changed. Savitri, the night cook, began reciting verses in a dead dialect none of the locals recognized. The bellboy Parth walked with his head tilted unnaturally, as though listening to a voice from beneath the floorboards. And the receptionist, Dinesh, he vanished entirely. But every morning, someone wrote in the guest ledger with his handwriting, "Room's full, but she needs one more." At 3:09 a.m., Kabir returned to room 309. He found it empty, lit by oil lamps no one had placed. The brass bowl in the center had returned, this time filled not with water, but sand, and buried inside it teeth. Human, not all the same. And beside the bowl, in perfect white chalk, "Bring her his face." Kabir knew what it meant. He was the one she waited for. Or maybe he looked like the one. Maybe the bride wasn't angry at the world, just at him. He fled the room and smashed the security system to stop the recordings. But before the feeds cut, camera 2 caught something. Room 206, empty, flickering lights. Then, a figure crawling out of a mirror, head first, wearing the bridal veil, crawling on all fours, and grinning. The villagers of Kuldhara had stopped speaking Kabir's name, because Kabir was no longer just a hotelier who restored the Merawat Haveli. He was the one she chose. And now, the Haveli belonged to both of them. Room 309 no longer had a door. It had an archway, carved in symbols no one could read, except one child, who began to whisper in Urdu-Sanskrit hybrid tongues, words she couldn't possibly know. When asked what it meant, she said, "The bride sees now, and so does he." That night, the hotel filled with guests, but there were no bookings. Yet footprints pressed into the courtyard tiles. The bell on the front desk rang on its own. The ledger opened and filled itself with names of people who never existed. One staff member quit on the spot after seeing a wedding procession pass through the hallway, carrying lanterns made of skin and singing without mouths. Kabir, what was left of him, was spotted once. Only once. A guest saw him in the antique mirror on the second floor, standing beside the bride. Both wore wedding garlands. Both were reflected, but no one stood there in real life. That was the night the fountain filled with blood. Clear one moment, red the next. It overflowed, and in the ripples, faces of past guests screamed silently from beneath the surface. One whispered, "We never checked out." The staff boarded up room 309 again. By dawn, the boards were gone, and the room had moved. It was now room 108, then 206, then 103. It never stayed in one place, because the bride had learned the halls, and she walked with Kabir now, together, smiling, searching for new guests. By now, the few remaining staff at Heritage Sands Retreat understood. They were no longer working at a hotel. They were caretakers of a ritual. The Haveli had become a living mausoleum, feeding off the memories and souls of those who dared sleep within its walls. Tourists still arrived, some drawn by rumor, others by invitation letters no one remembered sending. They walked in smiling, but their eyes changed within hours, dulled, like mirrors catching too much light. One woman checked into room 203. That night, she was found dancing in the ballroom, alone, barefoot, eyes closed, her mouth moving silently. The CCTV footage showed a full wedding band behind her, but no one else saw them. No one ever saw the band in person. Later, her luggage was discovered unopened, her clothes untouched. Only her passport was missing. In the ledger, her name appeared. Room 203, Meher Kaura, waltzed into the waiting arms. When her family called the hotel, the phone answered. A woman's voice, soft, elegant, said, "She's found her forever. Please don't call again." After that, the phones disconnected themselves, literally melted. The staff stopped answering emails, stopped logging reservations, because there was no point. The Haveli chose. It always had. It chose those who carried sorrow. It chose those who didn't believe in curses. And it chose those who laughed too loud in the courtyard after dark. They all ended up in room 309, no matter what number was on their key. The hotel's walls began to warp. Hallways grew longer at night. Rooms shifted locations. Some doors opened to staircases that hadn't existed before. And the whispers spread. Staff heard them behind walls, in kettles, beneath beds. "She wants a child next. Bring her a flower girl. She needs someone to carry the veil." The mirrors blackened, the brass fixtures tarnished overnight, and on the fountain's marble rim, someone had carved, with fingernails, "Every wedding needs more guests." The Haveli stopped pretending to be a hotel. It no longer needed bookings. It simply called. And those who heard it, tourists, wanderers, even grieving locals, felt an urge they could not explain. Like a forgotten RSVP long overdue. The staff had all vanished. Not fled. Vanished. Only Kabir remained, if he could still be called that. He sat in the old manager's chair in the lobby, eyes blank, hands folded over a guest ledger that never closed. His face was pale now, his smile fixed. His uniform had changed, resembling a groom's sherwani stitched from faded hotel linen and ash. Some say they saw him standing beside the bride under the banyan tree during the last eclipse, exchanging vows in silence. The moon that night never reappeared in full. The locals finally sealed the front gate with bricks and iron rods, but they still found footprints inside the next morning. Petals scattered, the mirrors in their own homes reflecting hallways they'd never walked through. One last entry appeared in the guest ledger, carved into the leather cover. "Room 309, you. We've been waiting. And if you ever find yourself near Kuldhara, if the wind grows quiet and you see an open gate where there should be none, if your phone buzzes with a booking confirmation you didn't make, if a key with faded brass and no room number shows up in your bag, you've already been invited. The bride is still waiting, and the room is always ready.